Hi folks, you're with Tacitus Today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the issue of selective breeding and how you can breed, how it's possible to breed for any living creature, whether it be plants or animals, breed for things such as breeding cows so that they're bigger and they carry more meat or something like that, or as in the the thumbnail here, to crossbreed different types of corn or different categories of corn on the cob, so that it produces bigger agricultural yields, and the same can be said for sort of wheat and all sorts of things. So selective breeding's been going on for a while. Again, with both plants and animals. With genetic modification, it's moved to one sort of, or maybe a number of steps forward. So instead of having to wait to, 100 years to get your outcome, you can get the outcome in a matter of months. So the timelines have certainly changed, as indeed has the intensity and the ability to sort of measure outcomes. But looking at this, you can also breed animals for intelligence. Now, I was on a plane flight once from somewhere to somewhere. I think it was San Francisco down to Mexico, I think it was. And I happened to be sitting next to a guy who looked like he was fairly well-to-do. Mexican dude. My Spanish at the time actually wasn't too bad. It's got rusty now through lack of use, but and his English was okay. But we were talking about, or get into talking about, he was a breeder or owned a breeding ground for bulls that would be in the bullfighting thing, which is still I may still be, I don't know, was still a thing in Mexico at the time. And and he was talking about the sort of bulls that they breed for the bullfights in the arena. The guys are going to be killed by the bulls are going to be killed by the, I don't know, is it matador, I think they're called. So in this sort of conversation, he was saying how they wanted bulls to be stupid. That was the whole purpose of the breeding ground, was to just breed bulls to be killed, but they had to be stupid, because if a bull was a bit brighter than the others and would work out pretty quickly how to gore the matador, so you'd go through your matadors too quickly, and so you had to breed dumb bulls. So if a bull showed any signs, or the breeding pairs or whatever showed any signs of anything other than the lowest level of bull intelligence, they would weed them out of the breeding program. Well, that one's a little bit brighter, no, weed them out. No, we just want the dumbest bulls that are going to really be the cannon fodder for the matadors, and to the crowd. It's never something I was sort of attracted to, this idea of the spectacle. I understand the sort of the goriness of it all, but they seem to pull pretty large crowds. And every now and again, the matador would get gored. But anyway, they were breeding specifically for dumb bulls. The bulls had to be as dumb as fuck, otherwise they would be. They wouldn't offer themselves up as easily to be killed as those bulls were. So now another case, a guy years ago, was breeding. I was only, I think I was in my late teen years here, but there was a guy breeding German Shepherds, and he was talking about he could breed, or had successfully bred. He could pick spot dogs, the German Shepherds, just a bit brighter than the others, and he would keep them as breeding pairs, and they would breed brighter dogs. And he said over a few generations, he sort of was saying you can add some serious extra IQ points to the dog, so the dog can start working things out that other dogs can't. So it can work out how to operate door handles to get through doors, and how to operate various things, pull levers and all sorts of stuff like that other dogs can't. And he's talking about one where the dog can predict that if the human will go to another doorway at the other side of the house, and the dog's already heading over there before the humans even moved in the inside of the house to do it. Things like that. And so he was talking about that he can breed extra IQ by selecting particularly bright dogs, or dogs that showed signs of just being a little bit brighter than the others. That over a few generations, you've got dogs that are coming out that are a whole lot smarter than the average. So I don't doubt that. It made sense to me. And you also saw this, say, particularly in the agricultural revolution in the late 1700s, where there was a real concerted effort to breed, different sort of vegetables or different agricultural produce to increase yields, and also to make sure that cows and bulls that were a little bit bigger than the others would be bred in order to produce more meat on the hoof and so on. So this has been around for a while. It's hardly new. And again, dog breeding going back many hundreds, if not thousands of years, has also, we can see that. I mean, given that all dogs were supposed to come from the wolf or something like that, or maybe that, the approximation of the dingo and those sort of prairie dogs, given they're all sort of come from those sort of roots, and you look at the different breeds of dog today, you can see how breeding methods have created all these different breeds and types of dogs. So the same can be said for humans, of course. Now, when you look at the time that the British aristocracy had a particularly strict view of quality control through selective breeding of their own type. Now, if you look at the various, at a time when the aristocrats were the only people who, other than the clergy, only people who could read and write and who could study and solve complicated problems, and whether it be mathematics or literature or whatever you like. So there was a real class of people. Now, but bear in mind, in Britain at its height, as in when, say, after the 7 Years' War, when Britain had become the dominant world power, certainly from a mercantile perspective and a naval perspective, the whole thing was run by about 600 or so families. So just a few thousand people were running the whole thing. Now, to be that success, such a small population, 7-8 million at the time, such a small population to be able to effectively be a global superpower, technologically and economically, and from a trade and mercantile perspective, those 600 families had to have a very high proportion of very good, very capable people. How do you achieve that level of supremacy unless you've got people who are pretty smart, who are prepared to understand complicated issues and act accordingly? The fact they're able to do this for fairly low cost as well is quite stunning. The cost of the massive armies that were employed by all the other heavyweight players of the day, the British were able to avoid that, have a navy that was very professional on a relative basis, and to impose their will, in all parts of the globe, and project power in all directions, and to do so with such a tiny population meant that their population was 1/3 the size of the French population, to give you some sort of idea. And to be able to achieve that, these people had to be very good. So, and they're very much into selective breeding. So they wanted to only breed with each other. This did create some inbreeding where you had the cousin sort of effect, but that wasn't as widespread as is intimated. It happened, but it wasn't as wide. Typically, if there was an embarrassment due to an inbreeding, they were taken off and quietly sort of put in some room in the castle and kept there quietly. But generally, the people who were doing this, and they weren't all geniuses, they weren't all brilliant. There were some idiots among them, to be sure. Or there were people who were nervous Nellies and ditherers, such as fortune would have it. There was a bunch of ditherers during the time when they were were fighting the colonists in North America, what's known as the American Revolution. Had there been some decisive government like a William Pitt or something there, the outcome would have been very different. Had the decisive admirals like Rodney and those been in control of the naval forces in North America at the time, the outcome again would have been very different. So it didn't mean they were perfect with the best people all of the time. But for the most part, in the Napoleonic Wars, in the 7 Years' Wars, and in other conflicts, and in the general administration of the nation and the empire, these people were very good, and they were bred for that purpose. And breeding was seen as absolutely important. And when you look at the writings and the musings of the people, whether you go to the Pitt the Younger and the Elder, Palmerston, and up to the likes of Lloyd George and even Churchill and so on, you see some people that were obviously of far above average intelligence, of great intellectual capability. It didn't mean they were right all the time and they never made a mistake or never erred. It didn't mean that, but as a general rule, you're looking at some exceptionally bright people, and a number of them in the positions of influence and power most of the time, and most of them were in that category. Now, that didn't mean that 100% of the parliamentarians were. You'd be lucky if you'd even half of them were, or a third or a quarter of them were. But also you had the ability of the people in Parliament to recognise people of ability and make sure that they got to the top. Not there wasn't jostling as well for glory and vanity and things like that. There were. But there was also this ability to recognise ability and say, well, right now we need a person of this capability or people of this capability to be managing the national affairs. And there was a willingness by others to surrender their positions or to stamp down their own vain ambitions for the general good, and say, well, no, that guy's much better at doing this than I would be, and so I'll step aside and give it to him. And that, you could look at people like Samuel Pepys, and the list goes on there of key and influential people over British history. So selective breeding there played a big part. They didn't want to breed outside of people with higher IQ. Now, given that they were in a group of people that all had well-exercised brains through the education system, and that on a relative basis, there were few others that had that level of education and that level of sort of, I don't know, mental exercises, doing the mathematics or doing the studying literature and geometry and so on. And if you look at, again, the naval officers that Britain was able to produce on a man-for-man basis, they were far better than pretty much anything else that was being done, particularly by the major powers. And this was interesting because some of the French design of the French warships was quite revolutionary. They were putting in some interesting innovations that the British hadn't caught up with. But because the British sailors and particularly the officers were so well educated and so in terms of naval ship management, were so well educated and well trained, particularly well trained and well practiced compared to any others, the British were able to achieve stunning naval victories, often with inferior equipment, just because of that. So I just wanted to sort of mention that as now. Britain lost its position as a global superpower, and was already substantially on the wane in the late 1890s, though being surpassed by Germany and the United States. And this was for two reasons. Technological innovations were one. The British had slowed down their capacity to innovate, particularly in the newer technologies, and also because of population mass. The population of Germany was almost double that of Britain, and the population of the United States was more than double again that of Britain. So population mass, consumer mass were certainly playing, not in isolation, but part of the wider thing. If you've got an innovative, technologically capable, scientifically capable society that also also has a large population and is very much dedicated to the national success, then you've got recipes in both Germany and the United States that the British had lost. Now, the British lost an attitude of free trade in the late 1800s, and they were forgetting or not realizing that they'd lost their role as the preeminent technological power of the world, and had ceded that to, again, the US and Germany. So free trade was now punishing them rather than benefiting them, and they didn't quite see that, and let it run for too long. So I just wanted to talk about selective breeding here. Now, to the globalists, white people, high IQ, capable, well-educated, hardworking white people, responsible white people, law-abiding white people, people who believe in the law, they believe in free and fair elections, they believe in independent courts, they believe that education should be technical and not ideological, these sorts of things. These people are the biggest threat to the globalists. These people have to be got rid of. They have to be got rid of. Otherwise, the globalist project will struggle. The globalists know this. And the people that are the main issue are white people. This is why we constantly hear about the biggest danger to we is white supremacists, Hitler, Nazis. That's why, because white people are anyone that believes in free and fair elections and the rule of law and due legal process, independent courts, that sort of stuff. They're white. Only white people believe in that. You'll struggle to find anywhere else in the world, and I've traveled the world a million times over. You will go to nowhere else in the world where those things are deemed as important or relevant. Power is important and relevant, but not these organisms of a democratic capitalist state where the people get to decide, because that's a very small nucleus, really, of countries that have that, and it's fairly recent anyway in historical terms. So to the globalists, that's the obstacle. The obstacle is white people who believe in free and fair elections and the rule of law. They are the enemy to the globalist project. All the other people of the world can be controlled, or are too dumb or stupid to notice, or can be bought off with trinkets and baubles and so on. But white people are the enemy because they do believe in the law. Can you imagine that? But you believe in the rule of law and due legal process, independent courts, free and fair elections. That makes you Hitler. I mean, the insanity of it is just almost, the mind boggles with the insanity of this, of what's going on. So if you import, you have to get rid of the white people, the high IQ white people. And so if you import a class of low IQ people, and you use them to replace the white people, which make no mistake is going on, whether it be in business or something. The amount of people I come across now, the affirmative action type hires in business, I'm staggered at the low IQ. It's you almost can't believe it. These people are so dumb, you think they couldn't even push a broom without fucking it up, and yet they're in positions of considerable, theoretically at least, considerable influence and power. They're general managers and human resource directors and marketing managers and so on and so forth. And you're looking at, holy fuck, how can you even be employed? You're so stupid. But yet they are, and they're replacing white people who are capable. But similarly now, the white people that are coming through, the younger white people, the young HR manager girly and all this sort of thing, they're as dumb as fuck. So because the education system is dumbed down and to the point where it's all ideological, we won't teach you to spell or read or write or do mathematical problems, but we will tell you every day that you're surrounded by evil Nazis that you have to fight back against: climate change, transgender rights, black lesbian rights. So they're consumed with all these thoughts, so that even when you present simple problems or discuss or try to discuss even quite simple things, they look at you and stare at you blankly. They've got no fucking idea. They can't even comprehend the minor level of complexity anymore. Yet they can respond to, say, well, 5 plus 16, and they'll look at you blankly and they can't. You can see the wheels are turning, but they can't get it, and they just don't know. Or you can talk about a major issue that's so beyond their comprehension that they don't even know that you've said it. But you mentioned the word, racist and something. bolt of electricity goes through the room. Racist! Somebody said racist! Racist! Hitler! And suddenly they're all action and they're all motivated and they're all keen and jumping out of their skin. But to the real issues, they haven't got a fucking clue. So we're looking at a dumbing down of IQ points. It's quite a serious one. And once you get rid of all the white people, and once you get rid of merit, very key here, once you get rid of merit and you get rid of the white people, then you've got the dumbed down society, which is, I think, essential for the globalist project. And I think they would see that we've got to get rid of these fucking white people. Why have we got rid of them? Well, they want these things like free and fair elections. Oh, no, Nazis. They want things like the rule of law. Fascist. They want things like due legal process in courts. Oh, fucking Hitler. So they got to be got rid of, because those things are obstacles to the globalist, enforcing the globalist ideological project. But if you look at, say, the difference between Haiti, that island off the on the southern coast of the United States in the Caribbean. You look at that. You look at their IQ, the average IQ of the population of Haiti, and not that they're getting many sort of mental exercise at a place like that, but you compare that to, say, a Western European country, you're talking about a difference in IQ points of 20 to 25, maybe more. I mean, this is huge. So it doesn't take many IQ points for differential IQ points between a society that stays in the Stone Age for 20, 30, 40, 50,000 years, or a society that moves from the Stone Age to landing rockets on the moon in a few thousand years. So this is a huge difference. Now, given merit is now viewed as an act of Nazism on steroids, so merit is frowned upon as being truly evil, because race, gender quotas, equity outcomes, and so on. So merit's going, which means the people that do have the high IQs and would perpetuate a high IQ system, they're being squeezed out or even made unemployable or all of the above, but they're being got rid of. And they're being replaced by low IQ people. I noticed this even in particularly where big finance is involved, which is in so many things now, and they're insisting that their nominee is appointed to the CEO role. And I meet these CEOs. I'm just thinking one recently I met. He's a nice enough guy, I suppose, but the guy was he had an IQ of 100, if that. And he's CEO of quite a big firm, appointed by, again, the big money people. He was their nominee, he's their boy, and he's just a flunky. He's a straight white guy, but he's just a flunky. So even now, where you look at the lack of merit in affirmative action hiring, hiring minorities just because they're black or something, or lesbians. You also look at the top there where the finance companies are putting their own nominees in. They may be straight white males or anything, but they're specifically picking totally controllable people who could not dream of getting a job of that pay or that seniority on their own merits. So that too has become a form of perverse affirmative action, even at the CEO level. Now, my feeling is that once the white people are replaced, and you're replacing with low IQ black and brown people, which they are, then the IQ points, assuming it's sort of somewhere around 100 to 105 or was, in that region, I think the IQ will be somewhere around 80. And the difference, that 20% difference is huge, because all societies that have that 80 type IQ, they all stayed in the Stone Age forever. They got to the Stone Age and they couldn't, even when they were exposed to societies of more advanced technology, they still couldn't transcend the Stone Age, which seems astonishing, but there you go. So I think that's where, and I think we're also seeing in that, and I'll do another video on this, in international wage equilibrium, where the Western worker is going to be making the same as the basket case Bangladeshi worker. There'll be an international wage. Now, that'll be achieved by either offshoring jobs from the advanced economies to the Bangladesh, or moving the surplus population of a Bangladesh or an India or whatever to the West in order to damp down wages there. So equilibrium is thus achieved. Now, they'll be able to do this without achieving cost of living equilibrium. So now if they got cost of living equilibrium, that'd be different, but they'll have a very high cost of living in one area and a much lower cost of living in another area, but just move the jobs and the people around to achieve an equilibrium that the international cabal of monopolies will orchestrate and stage manage. So I see that as being an issue of how they'll achieve that type of equilibrium on both the amount of jobs in any given area, that'll be, and also the wages in any given area. That'll all be predetermined by a central cabal in an effective form of socialist planning. But dumbing down the population and squeezing out the IQ is key to a lot of that. You've been with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for listening.